Going all in with Glenn Fleishman about Take Control books, liquid glass, public betas, and more. Part 1. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Incogni. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/Chuck and use the code Chuck at checkout. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, today we have an author with us. We have a Take Control author with us. I believe the count is 15 Take Control books, and I don't even know how many outside of Take Control. And I have to be talking, of course, about Glenn Fleishman. Glenn, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Chuck. Thanks for having me back.
Sometimes our schedules just don't get to put together properly. And so I thought instead of trying to focus on one Take Control book or two or three or four, that maybe we take a little bit higher level as to what Apple is doing with their operating systems, what your observations are. Then if we want to dig down into some of the Take Control stuff, that's great. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's great. And I should say, I think it's about 15 books. I actually have to go and count them. I have to search on the Take Control site because I think it's 8 books of my own, 8 or 9 now. And then I've taken over some revising books for a few other people. So Josh Centers has moved on to doing different categories of books. He's decided to leave the tech world behind, and who can blame him with especially every year with the changes that come on. So I've taken over a number of books that he wrote for Take Control, and I've been doing calendar reminders that Sally McFarland used to write as well. So it's kind of a mix, but it's been a big year for revision for me. I don't have any new books this year, but it was Apple having decided to completely overhaul how it lets us interact with their products, let's say, right? The whole liquid glass thing, which I'm sure people have now settled into and are completely happy with in every way. It's been long enough.
So just to be sure, I did go to the Take Control website and search on your name, and 15 books came up. So
oh my.
There's 15 at Take Control that have your name on it.
Oh my.
Yeah. So that's 15 plus 8. Yeah. You're a busy guy.
Yeah. It's a lot, but it's, this is that thing about, we always talk about at Take Control, that we'll look for pain points. So readers will tell us, hey, I don't get how this works. And we're like, oh, well, if it's a big enough subject, we'll do a book about it. So some books are about, say, calendar reminders, or weirdly, we have weirdly, even though I wrote it, we have Take Control of Find My and AirTags, which it seems like a strange topic, but the book about, I had a huge book that got bigger and bigger about networking and security for iOS and iPadOS, and it got so big, the Find My part just to become its own book. But that has to be its own title, so people who just want that can get it. And in the end, we broke up the networking and security book, or security and privacy book, into other books as well, because there's Apple just we wouldn't have accused them of this years ago, but they like to stuff in new features, and they don't always retire old ones or combine them. So sometimes you'll have now multiple ways into things, or there'll be 3 different interfaces to do something. And I have to say, one of the big advantages I think of liquid glass is that Apple went back and addressed some of that. So there's been some consolidation. So for instance, like the Messages app, I felt like there were very different ways to do things in Messages for Mac OS and on an iPhone or iPad. And now they're not identical, but the approach is substantially more similar across the platform. So I can tell somebody, hey, click this thing, the avatar, the profile picture in Messages on any device you're using, and the same thing will happen. So I appreciate when Apple does that, and that allowed me to tear pages out of some books where I was explaining 5 different things. And many of the books still go back a version or two, so I haven't been able to tear them all out. But when we update the books for iOS, or the 27 releases in fall of 2026, we'll likely lose the iOS 18 and Sequoia and earlier updates. And at that point, there'll be a kind of simplicity, I think, that emerges from the books that readers will appreciate. I, as a writer revising things, will appreciate that I don't have to say, click this, except if you're using this version, in which case you need to do that. And then, oh, that's not even found in that version, but you can go to, here's just one example. Do you use the iPhone mirroring feature that started in Sequoia for mirroring your iPhone on a Mac?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it often, but sometimes it's extremely useful. Well, Apple revised the notifications for it, and I think in a sensible way. Before, you had to do everything from the Mac in notifications, I think, and now there's a split between iPhone and Mac where you find them. So, of course, when I'm writing about this, it's we'll go here, except if using that, and then you have to go there, and then they relabeled, but the new version is much more consistent again. So, the next releases, I think, will bear the fruit for average users and for writers about it, that the same thing will get you to the same place, or the place you think you should look for something will be where it actually is, instead of in obscure locations. So all that said, I do appreciate the new releases. Even if I don't love Liquid Glass, I do appreciate this move towards consistency across the same apps and the same features across all the platforms.
Okay, so maybe you just buried the lead, but you intimated that maybe you don't care that much for Liquid Glass. And I'm curious to hear if that is across all the platforms, or is it just certain ones that you don't care for it more than others? Because I found, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but 10 minutes later, I barely even notice about 90% of the Liquid Glass options.
I think it's the penalty of starting to work with operating systems during early beta testing. So when you download the developer beta, because we're writing about it, you see all the stuff that doesn't work. And then as it gets better, you accept that, but you still have this little sense memory of it. So I thought when I first saw Liquid Glass, I thought this is a disaster. And of course they're going to roll it out. It's too late not to, but I don't know. And I think Jason Snell certainly, and many other people, said Apple always does course corrections. It's going to get better. Don't take what you're seeing now, even in the public betas, as the final thing. And it's true. They fixed a lot of stuff as we went over the summer. So I think the released versions of Liquid Glass and the ability to, reduce transparency in accessibility settings was there before, but I think you can kind of click that on and off and see whether you want kind of the full-on transparency effect or a little less. And that I think made a difference too. So by the time we get to the release versions, I actually quite like aspects of it. I think it's still a little horsey. I wish they'd put another year, and maybe this was what they didn't have in terms of what they wanted to do for consistency, but I wish they put another year into refinement. And I think we're seeing that in the 26 releases are basically the year of refinement. And the 27 releases will be the ones where like, oh, well, if it had been this way originally, no one would have complained that much, because I still see awkward stuff. You're scrolling and there's type that's overlapped and illegible at the top, and that should never happen. Or there's buttons that are illegible because they're too translucent and you can't read it. And there's horsey areas where too much space is taken up because they didn't think about certain interactions that seem to me to be very common. So with those carps, I still I think it evolved to a point where particularly Tahoe, I think, is a little elegant. Like, I think it actually works very well on the Mac. I think iPhone and iPad still have some room to go. And I don't think I've now tested yet. There's 26.1 betas are out. There is a switch, or there will be a switch that will let you kind of reduce the glassification. And maybe I will flip that on and off and see whether I want less glass. But yeah, I guess I really thought it was an incredible error. And there's some people who really think Liquid Glass remains a terrible error. Like, there are developers and Mac commentators who just think Apple should revert entirely in, version 27 or 26.1 and just give up this folly. And you know how Apple works. They're not going to do it. They built this in at a fundamental level. They're working on it probably for 2 years in order to get this much integration, and it's just going to evolve, and it'll become something we're more and more used to. But I do think I have an efficiency problem on an iPhone, especially, where I feel like too much territory is being taken up with stuff that is not necessary when I'm doing other things. Where in I feel like in iOS 18, I had more territory to work with because things like interface elements, search bars, or other things were either hidden out of the way or had to pull down to get them, or they just didn't take up so much space. So I feel sometimes I'm kind of like, wait, where I'm squeezing to look at something. So I guess I have a measured approach, which is I like less translucency. I don't really like the whole design philosophy, but I have gotten used to it and I don't hate it. So that's probably a big improvement over how I felt in June of 2025.
Boy, we could go so far down this rabbit hole, but I'm
Yeah.
going to resist. I am going to ask though that do you feel that it's a problem the way Apple has started doing all the public betas and making even the developer betas relatively easy to access? Because just what you said about a sense memory, it seems like a lot of pronouncements get made and then maybe things change, but eventually it has to come out. And I'm afraid people are being biased by some of that early coverage. And I'm
Yeah.
notorious. I do not do anything until it's released. I might this time I was tempted, and I played with one of the iPadOS betas on a mini. But other than that, I stay away from the betas and wait for the releases. And frankly, usually wait until there's at least a 0.01 or 0.02.
Yeah, I wonder. That's a really good question about whether we're seeing more people are seeing so much so early. It's kind of like I used to review theater when I was in college, and you weren't supposed to review the previews. Well, the first play I reviewed a preview, and I didn't know you weren't supposed to. And the paper I was working for was new, and they didn't know either. So the very nice public relations manager for the college theater, who we became actually good friends, he had me up to his office and said, "Hey, we'd really like to get you tickets for this for the future. We'd want you to do it, but you got to wait till opening night." I'm like, "Oh, opening night. Okay, got it. Sometimes I feel like I know it's funny, but it's like what the heck did I know? I sometimes feel like we're in that boat where we shouldn't review any version of an operating system until it's released, or even software, but companies really want to build attention, and Apple having public betas, I think is very important for some communities of users and definitely for developers. Having public betas out there, the developers have their versions, but they do want their users to be able to test beta versions. And if there was no public beta, or there was one a month before, developers wouldn't get that cycle. And I think it is a huge advantage to them. Users aren't going to sign up for the developer program and so forth. And then there are categories of users, especially, in schools and corporations and so forth, where, maybe it's 1 million people really do need to download a public beta and they're not developers. Because there's some environment in which they need to figure out what's going to work, and they want to test the upcoming versions of software. So maybe it's not 1 million, but it's certainly a large number of people in positions where they need to do it. So I get all that, but I think there has been this move away from saying to most people, "Hey, don't install a public beta. You should really wait because you're going to deal with all of the ugliness and the interface shakeouts and bugs and program incompatibility." I know it's fun to look at, but read the articles and wait till the release, because I think software companies get this all the time. They'll get people writing in, and it's like, I'm just a regular user and I'm this broke. Like, what are you using? I'm like, well, I'm using 26.1 beta 3, and they're like, we can't help you. And that person thinks, well, but Apple released it. I'm like, yeah, but they didn't. They said it's a beta. Things may break. So maybe Apple is making the public beta thing too big a deal, and there is that sense of anticipation, but I understand why they have to do it somewhat, and how would then gatekeep it is a problem. It is a little bit about how Apple used to time things around, sort of have sales events around different release dates for different kinds of products, which they still sort of do, but they train people to not buy stuff other times, and they would see huge hits in some of their sales. I think they've shaken it up a little bit, and they release some models at weird times, not iPhones, but other things. And I think that lets them not cannibalize their sales in favor of the next thing as much. I think that's the same thing with the betas, where they've made people expect them so much that people just think they should install them, and then they have the disappointment, heartache. Then they get all this negative commentary when things don't work or they don't like the version. Then it's released, and like you're like, I don't know, it's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it's good, because I'm not saying that you're easy to please, but more like you haven't gone through the heartache of going, and like, oh my God, the transparency is so much, I can't even see the screen. You got the thing that they actually wanted to release, and the release version is pretty solid because they worked through that with us in the beta testing.
And I've been surprised, as much of a focus as Apple puts on the experience of using their OSs, that they would potentially contaminate the experience with making the beta experience a bit more prevalent.
Yeah, it's true. You think for a company that has that tight of control, but again, I think it's become kind of a form of marketing where, okay, your operating system doesn't do it yet, but it's gonna, and hey, you can install this and see it early. Isn't that exciting? They don't do it. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I say they don't do that with the later releases, the dot releases, but they are now. You can really get public beta dot releases too very easily. So I don't know. I don't want people to be using buggy software, and I don't want them to be using pre-release software that has no promise it'll work in any way. So I keep I'm of different minds, and I have to, so I have no choice, and that means that I become jaded and angry. But everybody else doesn't have to. I should say, the one thing that I'm not emphasizing, of course, is that the big change was iPadOS. That iPadOS 26 is terrific. I think they. I don't use an iPad that much. I have an iPad mini, and I found it so much more useful and interesting to work with the new windowed apps gesture, and multitasking and gestures is the place you change it, right? But the new default mode, I think they brought so much that's good about the Mac while still preserving what is an iPad. That to me seems like something that should be extolled, and I think it feels very mature. Also, it seems like the work that must have been in progress for a long time. They're finally ready to roll it out. They cast away some of the past, although we're getting slide over windows are coming back in 26.1. So that was something I think people missed, even though you could kind of simulate it. So iPadOS 26, just I think unmitigated success, whether or not someone likes liquid glass approach or not, the ability to have a rich multitasking environment, I think they finally kind of hit the right combination.
Okay, so I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you are happy with that part. Today's MacVoices is supported by Incogni. If you've ever searched for your name or address in Google, it's shocking to find out how many results have your personal information, and it's not by chance. Data brokers and people search sites collect your personal information, your name, address, phone number, financial information, income, and hundreds of other records. They sell and share it publicly without your consent. But Incogni is here to put an end to that. You sign up, give them permission to act on your behalf, and they go out and demand that data brokers delete your personal information. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire data removal process for you. But it doesn't just do that and walk away. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back into these databases, requesting repeated removals, keeping your data yours forever. So you get way less spam calls, spam emails, and get more peace of mind. Incogni has also launched a new feature called Custom Data Removals, available in their unlimited plan. It allows you to send any link from any site that exposes your data. Then, Incogni's privacy professionals will go after it. This is especially useful for removing records from places like legal databases or people search engines that don't play nice with traditional opt-outs. You can get 60% off their annual plan by heading to incogni.com/Chuck and using the code CHUCK at checkout. It's also completely risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with them removing your personal information off the internet. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com and using the code CHUCK. That's incogni.com/Chuck and use the code CHUCK at checkout. Thanks to Incogni for supporting MacVoices. You also mentioned, though, the continuity across interfaces. Devices. And again, I'm anxious to see what you think about the degree to which that's been done and how successfully it's been done or not successfully it's been done.
Yeah, I think it's pretty terrific because so many of the books that I've written, like let's say, I have to look up, I've written so many, right? So I have to make sure, take control of FaceTime and messages, which also covers the phone app. This this is a big one, and also take control of securing your Apple devices. Both of those cover iPhone, iPad, and Mac, and also Apple Watch as appropriate. And it was great to revise those because I could see where, this feature is not available on iPad or iPhone. Oh, now it is. Or this feature, there's like a 14-step process on a Mac and it's one click on an iPhone or iPad. Oh, now it's one click on a Mac. So, I mean, obviously the biggest thing is that the phone app is now available on all the platforms and it works more or less the same. I think that is, I'm just finding that in my day-to-day usage. I don't know how much you work among or sitting at a Mac during the day and so forth. It just, I'll get a call that comes in and my iPhone will be over to my left, just sitting there, and I'll have the phone app ring on my Mac and I'll be like, oh, well, I can see, I've got the call screening option turned on. I can see the call screening information. Then I can pick up my iPhone if I'm going to walk around. I can pull up my headset and talk on it. I can see the voicemail on my Mac. It's weird how much that was missing now that we have it, right? That we, by its absence in the past, this is just finally feels like a fully functional, ecosystem of sort of phone and messages and FaceTime where it didn't before. So that was terrific. But I'm going to say I don't love the new contact poster metaphor for FaceTime and messages and phone where everything is kind of a contact poster, because I think it's an inefficient use of space on some of the apps on some of the platforms, but I think it's probably how most people use the apps. So most people are calling or messaging with a relatively small number of people. Messaging still lets you, of course, use pinned people, so I shouldn't complain about there. It's really phone and FaceTime, but it's, in FaceTime, clicking and tapping the tiles for people in the kind of the recents view or the favorites view in phone and FaceTime are still inconsistent. So there's still some work to be done there, but it's still across platforms. You're seeing kind of the same thing, and Apple TV as well. The take control of FaceTime and messages. I cover Apple TV, and then I've also updated to take control of Apple TV book. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth and kind of seeing, how do I hand stuff off between these devices? And there is something that's very nice that the FaceTime app for Apple TV is now very much in keeping with FaceTime on the other platforms. And I don't know if you remember, this is the thing, like maybe only somebody who writes a book and spends so much time looking at buttons. iPad had one way in FaceTime showing you extra features, and iPhone had a different, and there's like a slide over thing, and the Apple TV had another. So now there's a more button, the 3-dot more button. You click or tap it or select it on an Apple TV on any platform, and it gets you access to all the things like live translation if it's available, showing captions, share play, things like that, all in one place, not a bunch of icons, but with text labels as well as the icon. And so, again, I guess that's one of those things where before I sat down and looked at it comprehensively, I thought, well, this has changed a bit, hasn't it? And then you look at it like, oh no, I can tell somebody the same thing. You're on an iPad, an Apple TV, or a Mac, go to the more button, click or tap it, and choose X. And it's always going to be there if the feature is available on that platform. So I love that. And I think that's a great, very pro user feature too, or not for professional users rather, but it's a feature that's intended to help users. It's not, we added more features, we don't know where to put them. We now have a place where all the features are found.
How do you feel about the windowing system on the iPad?
I think it's I love the new approach with menus, and I love the new approach of being able to resize windows kind of on demand. I find that kind of windowing layer and the app switcher, which is now, I guess it's expose when you're using the windowed apps mode, I find that a little clunky. I think there could be more refinement because I'm sometimes not sure. I'll swipe up and I'm like, wait, now I'm on the application layer, or I'll tap the background rather, and it'll be like, well, here's the app layer and there's a bunch of apps. But what if I want to, and I'm kind of confused about how to get back to the app, especially because you can open multiple windows, and many iPad apps now let you have multiple windows, which I wonder how many people have discovered on their own. It's a little bit hidden because you use a menu typically to do it, or you have to have a keyboard and command click, things like that. So, I could have 5 mail windows or whatever. being able to go between the different mail windows, I still think is a little tricky, or being able to find them. I don't know if you're seeing that too. Are you more of an iPad user than I am? Because that's almost everybody who owns an iPad is more of an iPad user than I am.
I'm an iPad user to some degree. I have to say, though, that one of the big challenges I've had with it is just remembering I can do it, because I've become so ingrained in, okay, this app, and then move to the other app. And now I can have, multiple apps open. And so I'm training myself slowly but surely to do that. So I haven't explored maybe as much as I'd like to, but also you just taught me something. I didn't know about the multiple windows per app. So I'm looking forward to hanging up and doing this.
It's not exactly, it's discoverable, but it's not intuitive. So you're looking at it, you don't know you can open multiple windows. And in fact, just because people listening or watching, maybe you think that folks who write think we're full of ourselves and we know everything and come to us for all the answers. I love to tell the stories where I'm like, I was using the Mac for 5 years before I discovered blah. I was testing the multi-window environment, it's called windowed apps, I think, right? Windowed apps is the mode, for weeks. And suddenly, I look at I'm looking at all the menus because I'm writing about it. I'm like, wait, new window. What do you mean open a new window? It's not something that you expect. So Apple may have not hidden it, right? Apple may not have made it fully discoverable because they didn't want to confuse people. But if you do certain kind of Mac things on your iPad, then a new window opens. So as I say, there's places where if you command click, you've got a keyboard connected to your iPad, so you're using it in more of a desktop way, and a mouse, and or whatever pointing device, and you command click on an entry in some app, it will open a new window just like it would on a Mac. And you think, oh, well, that responded as I expected if I were using a Mac. So it's discoverable in that sense, but you really have to look at the menus. I don't even know if you've gone into all the, like a Mac, there are prefab window setups, arrangements that you can get from the green resize button, but also from the window menu on iPadOS. And I've barely experimented with that. And so when your windows are all kind of messed up, you can actually just use that to reorganize them or resize them. And again, not hidden, but not totally obvious until you start exploring. So maybe Apple is rewarding. It's kind of, as I say that, I think maybe for both of us, Apple is hiding features until we feel we missed something, and then when we explore, we find them. Instead of if they threw them at us, maybe we'd feel it's too much different. And so if you don't want to use those features, you don't see them. They're invisible to you. It's only when you seek them out or have found them that they are. So it's like revelations, as you go through meditation or religious ecstasy. You ascend, you get new levels of meaning as you find new features.
Oh, I want to be enlightened. No, I think that's an interesting point, Glenn. But I also feel like that may be the way the Mac interface itself is too. There are so many controls. There's so many options, and I still come across things. It's been a while, and if you ask me which one, I can't tell you. But once in a while, it's like, I forgot about that if I ever knew about it, and that's perfect for what I want to do.
Yeah, this is the case why we wrote at Take Control. By the way, I don't think I mentioned here before, but I signed on as executive editor. It's kind of a part-time position at Take Control several months ago, and so I'm a little more involved in helping Joe set editorial direction. I'm doing more editing, doing more strategic planning with him and all that. And so that's in one of those roles. I'm doing, revising books that other people have decided to move on from. So Joe had been asked by readers for years and years, is there just some book I can read that gets me up to speed? And we're always, Apple has some documentation of this or that. And so he finally wrote, and Josh wrote, and I've been revising an iPhone and iPad basics books and a Mac basics book. And I found in revising iPhone and iPad basics, I had that same experience. Again, been writing about the Mac for decades. And I was like, oh, and the iPhone, since it came out, I didn't know it could do that. Well, that's great. Or I'd be testing something and find some new feature, be like, oh, I need a document that I didn't know that even existed. So there's still so much that can be uncovered. But I think the philosophy of those two books is really, it's for people who maybe are new to the platforms. Maybe they're dedicated Mac users and they're new to an iPhone or iPad. But I think it's also not a terrible thing for people who have been using an interface for a while and like, just tell me how it works now, because Apple's changed so much. So we have, every year we do a revision book. So we have iOS and iPadOS 26, and we have Tahoe. Those come out in the summer and then are updated, that just say, here's every single thing we found that Apple changed. And so we'll be updating those soon, because the 26.1 releases will come out, and we'll have, here's the things that also changed in 26.1. But the basics books they're written from the standpoint, this is of course what always happens too, is the first edition of those books covered iOS 18, iPadOS 18, and then also macOS, was it 15, Sequoia. And of course, Apple chooses that moment to do a massive interface change and come out with Liquid Glass. All the apps change. So Joe and I had long conversations about it, and eventually we decided to freeze those books. So anyone using an older version of macOS, iPad, iPhone OS can go back or iOS can go back and still buy those. So the current Mac Basics and iPhone and iPad Basics books are, the baseline is that you're using the 26 releases. And so I think there are plenty of people, and I would say, again, kind of including myself, since I revised the book, who, if you don't feel you completely understand what Apple is up to after all the changes that have been made, the basics book isn't like you don't know how to use a computer. It's, this operating system is new to you, and maybe it would be helpful to have a book that you could actually just look up and say, oh, how do I do that thing that I've been doing? I don't remember how to do it anymore. And it's in there. And so that's been, I think, very instructive to me, because it's made me once again kind of go back to that position of being a new user, or a new to me user, like with the 26 releases where it's new to everybody, and have to write from that standpoint, where everything is a discovery. How does this work? I don't know. Apple just changed it. I'm finding it out along with you. It's when you're teaching a class, there's some teachers like, I'm teaching a class, the students are so advanced, I just need to be a chapter ahead in the book. Sometimes I feel like that, where we're sort of, with the machetes trying to create a path, because we know how to avoid falling off the cliff, and then the readers are behind us like, all right, you just keep going. And like, all right, we're finding out the path as we go too, but we hope we'll lead you in the right direction.
Anytime anybody brings up basics books or basics courses or whatever, and they say, well, I'm beyond that. No, I love taking those, because at the very least, they remind me of things. And a lot of times I'll learn new things, because to your point, the OS has evolved. All of the OSs have evolved so much that it is hard to keep up. I appreciate the fact that you and Joe and some others, keep up the Take Control books, because at least I have a prayer of holding on.
Well, it is an exploration every year to figure out what's changed. And, some years I'm swearing because Apple did things that why did you do this? And, last year, I think it was last year, yeah, for the fall, the iOS 18 era of releases, I was revising the calendar reminders book and discovered that Apple had changed, I think, every icon in the program. So, we have to take these little screen captures. I'm capturing stuff and then shrinking them down and sticking them. It's like artisanally placing them in the book, all the icons that people have to click. It's like, the book would have taken X hours to revise. And then 5 hours of that was capturing icons and knitting them into the right spot. But again, I understand why they do that, because their goal is consistency and clarity. And as long as I believe they're moving in that direction, I'm not too aggravated, even if I have to spend the time doing it. I think, Apple shouldn't be listening to me about anything, because they know their business better than I could possibly do it, obviously. But I think they have listened perhaps to the users, or they've had their internal processes gotten better. As I say, is that the consistency is the thing that I will praise them for, both as someone using it and as a writer, especially every year. If next year, when the 27 versions come out, and I don't have to cut and paste little pearls of icons, I'll say, thank you. You kept it consistent, so people don't have to learn another icon for the same task this year as they did last year. Here's a good one, though. I want to tell you this just in passing about the both kind of unintended consequences of interrelated new features, and being a writer and trying to not be a know-it-all. I'm looking at my phone the other night, and there is a weird tag icon in the status bar. And I'm like, what did I do? Is that the VPN, whatever? And I post a picture of it on Blue Sky and say, does anybody know what this is? I've never seen this before. And I'm digging around. Finally, someone says, that's the Office notification status. And I thought, I've never enabled that. And sure enough, you look at focus status, or not, sorry, the focus status. You look at you go to settings, focus, and it shows you there's a different icon for each status, like do not disturb and driving and sleep and so forth. And there is one for I want to say it's Office or whatever it is, something at Office. And it's not a tag, it's a lanyard, it's an ID thing with a little hole for where you put the thing around your neck on it. So it looks like a corporate ID. It's like, oh, well, I don't work in a corporation, so I didn't immediately recognize it. I thought it was a tag. And what it was is you can enable, and I think it's just new in the 26 releases, you can enable these smart focus suggestions. And there's a couple different places where you set those. As a result, I had apparently either enabled or not disabled a new default, and it just decided I was at the office based on clues and cues and put me in office focus mode, which I never use. And I was like, what the heck? So I'm like, what the heck is this icon? How did I do this? And then,